I feel like, and talking to you a little bit off air, you have had, I don't want to call it a full like mea culpa, but you have reconsidered the Dan Quinn hire. To be clear, you weren't down on it. You liked it a lot.
Yes.
But with the benefit of hindsight, I wonder if Dan Quinn would have actually been your favorite coach to come here, seeing that how this staff has come together.
I think that's the big coup for landing a guy like Dan Quinn, who we threw the retread label on him, and people were concerned about, his shortcomings in Atlanta and how would he do in his second act as a head coach. Like Craig just alluded to, Mike Macdonald was probably my number one guy throughout the entire process. Knowing what I know now about Dan Quinn's staff, if we got to do a little, like, what's it called, Catch-22 and go back and have revisionist history.
I don't think that's what a Catch-22 is.
That's not a Catch-22?
No, we just use a time machine. Go back.
Use a time machine. Anyways.
A Catch-22 is like when you're caught between two things where you don't really have a good option.
Well, some people felt like that as far as this coaching search went.
That is true.
But I think for Mike Macdonald, the struggles, I don't want to call it struggles, but his staff is not completed yet. And he was hired before Dan Quinn was.
That is true.
So there are some hurdles and challenges that he's having to face. And we know this, Craig, you being on Washington's beat for several years, know how important it is, right? That relationship between coaches and players. And I know the head coach gets a lot of the attention for the success, but I think your team is only as good as your assistants are, because those are the guys that are probably spending more one-on-one individual time with the players. With that being said, I think Dan Quinn and the staff that he's put together probably blows Mike Macdonald's staff out of the water, and Ben Johnson for that matter, who we don't know how he would have filled out his staff. So, like, in hindsight, I feel better about the Quinn hiring now that I know the staff, even though there's one member of the staff that I'm a little bit concerned with.
Who's that?
Ryan Kerrigan. I love HK. I love trying to keep former players in the role, in the fold, and in the rotation and all that. But as a pass rushing specialist, he had one move. He was a one-trick pony as a pass rusher. And I don't mean to say that facetiously or like talk down on Ryan. He was a darn good player.
Yeah.
I just don't see the benefit of him being a pass rush specialist.
So I think there's a lot more to pass rushing than moves, right? And I think that a lot of things that you talk about as a pass rusher aren't about, like, let me teach you some new moves. It's not like you come in every day and you're like, let's work on spin moves today, guys. Right. It's about angles. It's about leverage. It's about things that he understood in a way that allowed him to have double-digit sack seasons. Double-digit sack seasons, despite only having one, great move. But he was a guy that could, didn't necessarily need moves. He could understand speed to power and, those kinds of things. So I do think that a lot of the move stuff is kind of what guys work on in the offseason, or you have naturally.
For sure.
As opposed to the leverages and kind of the how do we run our games and things up front. And one thing that I actually love this for Ryan as much as I do for the team is, like, that's Dan Quinn's background. Right. Ryan and DQ getting to pick each other's brains is going to be great for both of them. But I think it's, in terms of teaching it, like, obviously Ryan's going to be able to learn a lot from Dan, and that's going to make him a better coach. And this is the place that he wants to live. His family's here. Ryan, I know, spends a lot of time out in California and did as a player as well. But, like, I think that, like, this is the place he sees as home. And if he can work with this organization, and for once someone that is homegrown can actually pan out for Washington, like, that'd be sick.
Yeah.
Could you imagine,
novel
Lynnell?
Concept, huh?
We've produced some good media members over the years. Your Santana Mosses, your London Fletchers, your Logan Paulsons, for instance. But to have someone actually help the football operation would be sweet. So yeah, I'm not. And he's also, like, he's so far down on the list. All due respect to Ryan, but, like, can he have an impact? Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
But I think it's hard for him to do super damage. Although that is the one spot that's still open. Worth mentioning, the one spot that's still open is who Ryan Kerrigan is going to most directly report to in the D-line coach.
No, that was filled. Did you not? Daryl Tapp.
Oh, they got Daryl Tapp?
Daryl Tapp, yeah.
When did that happen?
That happened during the Chris Russell show. We broke that during our show, yeah.
Anthony, how do we miss that?
Yeah, Daryl Tapp is, yeah.
How do we miss Daryl Tapp?
Sorry, you're welcome. I don't know how to put it. But, yeah, Daryl Tapp is the new D-line coach here in Washington.
We had our meeting with CK. That's how we missed it.
Oh, okay.
You were in.
You want to know what it is? It's the boss's fault. Those bosses.
I wanted to ask you too, because me and
That's
Russell,
a great hire, by the way. That dude's been around forever.
tremendous. And if you talk to people in San Fran's organization, they viewed him in a similar light as they viewed D'Amico Ryans, and we know what D'Amico was able to
Which,
go on
by
and
the
do.
way, is crazy that they then let him go. If they thought of him as D'Amico-like and like they fired Wilkes today, whoo.
DQ's got some pull, man. That's part of it. And Adam Peters also has some pull. So
that is true.
That's huge. I love the amount of former players that we have on the roster, and that's what I'm most excited about, specifically on defense and the ability to get the most out of certain guys like Cam Curl if you decide to bring him back, and Emmanuel Forbes and Jamin Davis. I'm excited for the young nucleus that Washington has on defense, because no matter how good you thought they were in, let's say, 2022, I think they can exceed that this coming year because the staff is a lot better.
I think they can too, and I think the thing that's exciting is we're going to find out really quickly who's good and who's not. And that's the thing
right
that I
away.
think
Yep.
last year was so frustrating is and people I was texting about this with, I think it was Logan, but it might have been someone else on the beat the other day, but we were talking about how like everyone is so down on this roster. Like, you know, Ben Kurt, who's kind of starting to blow up in the digital space. He was an NFL quarterback for 5 years, and he's doing a bunch of fun stuff on YouTube. And Kurt was like, hey, I would trade down out of that second pick if I was Washington and try to get a haul because that roster needs so much help. And I think that is kind of the national perspective. And look, we said during the offseason last year, like, hey, this roster isn't as bad as the national people think. And turns out that we were wrong, and so were they. It was actually worse.
Right.
But at least that's how it played. But I kind of actually think it was so poorly coached that there may actually be more talent than people realize, and it's got to get coached up well. And if it is, then, oh my God, there could be a revelation this year defensively, which I'm not saying is going to turn them into a playoff team in year one, depending on what happens at quarterback, but like could make them far more formidable. But I think what we definitely know is, based off the quality of this coaching staff, if they do play poorly again, it's going to be because these players are not very good. It's not going to be because the coaching is bad. Like, AKA, we gonna find out.
Exactly. And one guy I would circle going into the offseason who kind of came on a little bit with more opportunities at the end, KJ Henry. I think his body type and him being moved around, I think he's got inside, outside, like pass rush ability. So I'm curious to see how DQ and company line him up.
For sure. I think maybe next week I'm out next week. So, but 2 weeks from now, or whenever we next do this, we should definitely start talking about how some of the quarterback dots line up, because I know you've been watching those guys a lot. If you want some more thoughts from Lynnell on the quarterbacks, make sure you follow him on Twitter. And, of course, you can check him out whenever he is on, whether it's with Chris Russell on Wednesdays from 1 to 3, from 1 to 4. That's when my show starts, because that's when that show ends. 1 to 4, or on overtime or the weekends over on 106.7 The Fan. But next, I want to get into some of the Wizard stuff. We talked to Josh Robbins on the show yesterday about some of his reporting. There is some interesting stuff to chop up here on kind of the direction this team is going in the final 30 games of the season. Lynnell and I will hit that next here on the Team 980.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.